You hear? 69. We're good. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yeah, this side. Yashodanandana. But you grab some pillows for him. Yashodanandana. There you go. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, We have more books. We have more books in a minute. Just Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Purajikacharya Ashtotar Tadashi Shima. His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Purajikacharya Ashtotar Tadashi Shima. Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. I forgot. Did we do text 9? John McCormick? Tapas, you there? He's there. You sure?
It is text 9, Prabhu. It's text 9, Prabhu.
We're on text 9.
Yeah, my mobile was ringing, so I just...
All right. Start keeping this book for him. All right, we're on page 194. Unless you have the one book that has a different page, and we have to hide that book. You're not on page 194, right? Are you on page? Yeah, because you have the one book that's different. You see those tiny little margins? I can tell from here. They're much smaller than the others. Anyway, you got the right verse. Text 9 of chapter 4. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 8th day of June, 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we're in chapter 4 entitled Transcendental Knowledge, text 9 on page 194. Janma, karma, chame, divyam, evam, yo, veti tatpataha, Chakva deham punar janma naiti mam eti sojana janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tatpataha Chakva deham punar janma Naiti mam eti sojana Janma karma cha me divyam Evam yo veti tattvataha Chakva deham punar janma Naiti mam eti sojana Janma karma cha me divyam Evam yo veti tatpataha Chakva deham punar janma Naiti mam eti sojana Kunda? Janma karma cha me divyam Evam yo veti tatpataha Chakva deham punar janma Naiti mam eti sojana Janma karma cha me divyam Evam yo veti tatpataha Chakva deham punar janma Naiti mam eti sojana Prabhu? Janma karma cha me divyam Evam yo veti tatpataha Chakva deham punar janma Naiti mam eti sojana Bhajamanal. Oh no, wait a minute. Do you want to try? Go ahead. Janma karma cha me divyam Evam yo veti tattvataha Chakva deham punar janma Naiti mam eti sojana. Go ahead, Bhajamanal. Janma karma cha me divyam Evam yo veti tatpataha Chakva deham punar janma Naiti mam eti sojana. Mataji? No? Okay. Anyone on Zoom? Guess not. Okay. I'll read the synonyms myself. Janma, birth, karma, work, cha, also, me, of mind, divyam, transcendental, evam, like this, yaha, anyone who, veti, knows, tattvataha, in reality, chakva, leaving aside, deham, this body, punaha, again, janma, birth, na, never, eti, does attain, mam, unto me, eti, does attain, saha, he, Arjuna, O Arjun. Translation. Krishna says, one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjun. Purport. The Lord's descent from his transcendental abode is already explained in the 6th verse. One who can understand the truth of the appearance of the personality of Godhead is already liberated from material bondage, and therefore he returns to the kingdom of God immediately after quitting this present material body. Such liberation of the living entity from material bondage is not at all easy. The impersonalists and the yogis attain liberation only after much trouble and many, many births. Even then, the liberation they achieve, merging into the impersonal Brahmajyoti of the Lord, is only partial, and there is the risk of returning to this material world. But the devotee, simply by understanding the transcendental nature of the body and activities of the Lord, attains the abode of the Lord after ending this body and does not run the risk of returning to this material world. In the Brahma Samhita 5.33, it is stated that the Lord has many, many forms and incarnations. Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadim, Ananta Rupam. Although there are many transcendental forms of the Lord, they are still one and the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. One has to understand this fact with conviction, although it is incomprehensible to mundane scholars and empiric philosophers. As stated in the Vedas, Purusha Bodhini Upanishad, Eko Devo Nityalila Anurakto Bhakta Vyapi Ridyantaratma. The one Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternally engaged in many, many transcendental forms in relationships with his unalloyed devotees. This Vedic version is confirmed in this verse of the Gita personally by the Lord. He who accepts this truth on the strength of the authority of the Vedas and of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and who does not waste time in philosophical speculations, attains the highest perfectional stage of liberation. Simply by accepting this truth on faith, one can, without a doubt, attain liberation. The Vedic version, Tattvam Asi, is actually applied in this case. Anyone who understands Lord Krishna to be the Supreme, or who says unto the Lord, "You are the same Supreme Brahman, the Personality of Godhead," is certainly liberated instantly, and consequently his entrance into the transcendental association of the Lord is guaranteed. In other words, such a faithful devotee of the Lord attains perfection, and this is confirmed by the following Vedic assertion. Tameva vididvati mrityumeti nanyak panta vidyate yanaya. One can attain the perfect stage of liberation from birth and death simply by knowing the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and there is no other way to achieve this perfection. This is from the Shvetashvatara Upanishad 3.8. That there is no alternative means that anyone who does not understand Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead is surely in the mode of ignorance, and consequently he will not attain salvation simply, so to speak, by licking the outer surface of the bottle of honey or by interpreting the Bhagavad Gita according to mundane scholarship. Such empiric philosophers may assume very important roles in the material world, but they are not necessarily eligible for liberation. Such puffed-up mundane scholars have to wait for the causeless mercy of the devotee of the Lord. One should therefore cultivate Krishna consciousness with faith and knowledge, and in this way attain perfection. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Salakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara. So in this chapter so far, Krishna has been describing the pedigree or the history of the Bhagavad Gita. He begins by just saying, I described this yoga process, bhakti yoga process, to the sun god millions of years ago. What is that? Imam vivasvade yogam proktavanaham abhiham vivasvamanavepa manurikshakavegri. So he's giving a history. Vivasvan spoke it to his son, Vaivasutta Manu, who then spoke it to Ikshvaku, and then it came down in human society. And then he makes this very important statement about the parampara. Parampara, Prabhupada defined as the disciplic succession. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshi avadu, that the rajarshis, this is especially meant, this science, for leaders of society. What is a rajarshi? Combination of a raj, a king, and a rishi, a Vedic scholar. So that means that the kings, the leaders of society, were meant to be realized in this science. They're meant to be scholars. And that's the best combination. And we find that in some of the great souls who we find in the Srimad Bhagavatam, such as King Parikshit himself, Yudhishthira, and of course Ramchandra is also mentioned there, beyond the Rajarshi. But the point is that this is a very important science, not just for people in general, but for the leaders of society to know, and for them to be devotees. And we also get history from Srimad Bhagavatam. When the leader of society is actually a devotee, then his concern is to bring the people along in Krishna consciousness. Like it says in the second chapter of Bhagavatam, Atta pumbidvijashe varnasham vibhagasha svanutitasya samsiddhi haritosharam, that the perfection of varna and ashram, which is the organization of society according to social standing and according to the spiritual progression, the whole purpose of it is to satisfy Hari. If Krishna is in the center, samsiddhi, perfection, is haritoshanam, satisfying Hari. Then everyone can be satisfied, and even the demigods are very satisfied. They provide, for instance, the right amount of rain at the right time, not too much, not too little. And everything goes on nicely. So, as we learned also in this chapter, when there are discrepancies in Dharma, and Krishna understands that, then he either personally comes, or he sends as one of his expansions in order to reinstitute Dharma. Sometimes necessary to eliminate the miscreants and to reestablish dharmas, which is what Krishna did here. The battle is about to take place, and what Krishna has worked and he has planned how Yudhishthira can then take the throne, and the miscreants will be eradicated. So these are all Krishna's activities. Janma karma tattvata. The word tattva is very important here. It means in truth. When one who understands Krishna's birth, or the transcendental nature of Krishna's birth and karma or activities or lila, in truth, then such a person, when leaving the body, doesn't come back to another material body, but goes back to Godhead. Right? Comes to me, naiti maniti, which is what we should aspire for. But knowing Krishna's birth and activities in truth is not such a simple thing. And they're so often misunderstood. And there is a whole class of transcendentalists who try to attain liberation without that, without bhakti. But this is not really possible. The demigods, when Krishna's in the womb of Devaki, about to take birth, they all come and to the place where, the dungeon there, and they're hidden away, but they offer these prayers. And in those prayers, this is the most famous one, probably quote all the time, and they say, Yen ye adabindaksha vimuktamaninas tvayashtabavad avishuddha buddhaya aruha kritrena param padang patantyadho anadrita yushmarangriya. That besides the devotees, because he's been glorifying the devotees of Krishna, there are others, ye anye, O lotus-eyed Lord, who may think that they're liberated. They have the impression that they're liberated. But their intelligence is still impure, abhishuddha buddhaya, because they're not really devotees. And how can they get even the semblance of liberation? By severe austerities. Kritrena, even the very word, gives you the feeling for the severe austerities, to try to control the senses and the mind and fix it on Brahman, impersonal, because they don't have faith in Krishna. They're abhishuddha buddhaya. So a few can get up to the Brahman platform, param padam, they're describing. Aruha, they rise, aruha kritrena, by severe austerities, param padam, but tatak padantyado, they then eventually fall down again, because anadrita yushmarangriya, they're averse to serving your lotus feet. So the only secure place, the only secure platform of liberation is absorption in bhakti rasa. In other words, accepting the personality of God as the absolute truth and our relationship as servants, and being absorbed in that shelter, Krishna's shelter. And there's so many expressions of that. This is one verse describing that, because one can only know Krishna through bhakti. That same word tattvata is used in the end of the book, in the 18th chapter, bhaktya mama vijanati yavanyaschasmi tattvataha, where Krishna says exactly that I can be understood as I am in truth, tattvataha, the same word is used, only through bhakti, only through pure unalloyed bhakti. Because Krishna reveals himself to his bhakti, otherwise he reserves the right of not being understood. Naham prakasha sarvasa yogamaya samarvata. So the only way to know God is through this process of developing loving devotional service for Him. And He progressively agrees to reveal Himself according to our purity, our sincerity, and faithfulness. That's how it works. Prabhupada would also give the example of some big, so-called big man in society, a president, or you can't just say, well, I want to know all about your activities, you know. You don't get past the Secret Service guys, you know. You can't, you know. You're not privileged. But if you become favored by service and by glorification and all the other things, then you can get into the inner circle and you can know more. So the same thing is there in spades with Krishna. That he only reveals himself in his real reality to his intimate devotees. And even then they can only understand a minute portion, because Krishna's glories are infinite. But what they understand is the truth. And that's the difference between Gyan and Vigyan. You know, anyone can pick up the Gita and say, yeah, I know Krishna is God in the Veda, in the Hindu pantheon, you know, whatever, they have some misconception. But they don't really know. They don't really, they have no Vigyan. Vigyan is opening the bottle of honey and tasting the honey. And Gyan is, yeah, I know about the honey. I know all about the chemical combinations of it and different kinds in the flowers that went in it. But what do you know? You didn't taste it. Yeah, that's the Vigyan. So when we have that in truth, then we're assured of going back to God. Any comments on this verse? Yes, please. Yeah, over there. Yeah.
I just had a question. Something in the purport kind of stuck out to me. It said that, bear with me for 1 second. It says, although there are many transcendental forms of the Lord, they are all one and the same. So does that mean that people who are devout Christians and who are Buddhists, who have a lot of faith and maybe have that bhakti towards Buddha or whoever, do they attain the supreme like a Krishna Bhakta would?
No, they'll attain Buddha Loka. I mean, whatever. They're one, and I think, you know, I don't think Buddha is Vishnu Tattva, if I'm not mistaken. Right? Is he? No. And so that's not what he's speaking about here. Many transcendental forms of the Lord, they're still one and the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he's speaking of like the Chaturvyuha, you know, Vasudeva, Sankarshampa, Naniruddha, Lord Ram, Matsya Avatar, all these, these Vishnu Tattva avatars. So we understand that they're all Krishna, but they don't manifest the qualities of Krishna in full. Only Shyamasundar, Krishna in Goloka, is the fullest manifestation. You know, there's these the 64 qualities of Krishna that you'll find in the Nectar of Devotion. And they're divided. 50 of those we can share to some degree. You know, the ability to speak very skillfully. Well, human beings can have that to a certain degree. Well, Krishna has it infinitely, you know. So, but we share those. But then there's 5 that only Shiva has. He has the other 50, but we can't have. Always be situated in one Sarup. I forget some of the others. I know them if I dredge my memory. And then there's 5 that even Shiva doesn't have, that Narayan has, and the other Vishnu Tattva. But there's 4 that only Krishna has, among the whole, even any manifestation. Always surrounded by the gopis, you know, at the highest love, playing the flute. You won't find Narayan with the flute, you know. And Asamanod Varupa, unequaled and unsurpassed beauty and opulence, you know. And what is the other one? Sarvabhuta Chamatkar Lila Kalola Balyadi, an ocean of Lila that is so astounding to moving and unmoving living entities, you know. So Krishna is unique in that sense, But Narayan and Ram, they're Krishna, but they don't manifest all the qualities. They don't manifest all the qualities. So as far as these, the Christians are worshiping, we have to look in actually what their conception of God is. It's not just that if you worship God, that you're also going to get the benefits of worshiping Krishna. Krishna is that's why Prabhupada makes it seem this supreme personality of Godhead. And there's so many misconceptions. As soon as you get away from the genuine Vedic literatures, the Puranas, as accurately translated and commented upon, then there's all kinds of misconceptions and distortions that take place. So we have to be careful. But what's really encouraging is that, right in this chapter, this whole idea of parampara, that parampara, Prabhupada would often give this analogy. You have a mango tree, ripe mangoes on it, and many of them are near the top, the ones that got the most sun, so they're most ripe. You can't go up there, pick them, throw them down, and then come and expect to have something. When you come down, you'll have a mess down at the bottom, right? So you have to have a string of people who are climbing or on ladders, handed down carefully, and then it comes down and you have a good, the mangoes are preserved. So similarly, this knowledge has to be very carefully handed down from guru to disciple. And that's why the parampara is so important. And by the force of time, that can also be broken. That's also in this chapter. That's what he says in that very verse. That it has been coming down. I spoke it to the sun god. He spoke it to his son, Vivasvan, and then it came down, and now it's come down to human society. But by the great force of time, Mahata, Kala, Mahata, the science as it is has been lost. And so now I've come again to reinstate it. And so we're so fortunate because we're coming down from Krishna as Krishna and also Lord Chaitanya through the six Goswamis and parampara. So we have the science as it is. If we accept it as it is and we practice, then we can also become media for handing it on to others. Or if we're not so realized, let's give them a book. Prabhupada's there in his books. Mukunda.
Regarding Buddha, this is something I've wondered about because when I first met devotees, the presentation was always that, at least the way I picked it up or remembered it, was that Buddha was like Vishnu Tattva. I guess that's how I was taking it. And I thought, only recently did I come across like the idea that he's not, but I thought for him to be part of like the Das Avatar and for Jayadev Goswami to say, Keshavadritta Buddha Shodhira, for a long time I figured he was, but then there was some other, even there's something about the Gaudiya Math discussing, Buddha, and it seems that he wasn't, but it's not definitive to me. It's not clear.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say anything because I'm not so up on that. But I did hear once that there's two Buddhists.
Yeah, there was something like that in this book I read with Balaram.
Yeah, it's not so simple.
Yeah.
So we'll have to put that on hold.
Anyway, okay, that's all.
Shall we go on? Okay. Now, text 10. Oh, this is an incredible purport. All right, great. Vitaraga Bhayakrodha Manmaya Mamapashita Bahavo Jnana Tapasa Putamudbhavamagata. Being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. Purport. As described above, it is very difficult for a person who is too materially affected to understand the personal nature of the Supreme Absolute Truth. Generally, people who are attached to the bodily conception of life are so absorbed in materialism that it is almost impossible for them to understand how the Supreme can be a person. Such materialists cannot even imagine that there is a transcendental body which is imperishable, full of knowledge, and eternally blissful. In the materialistic concept, the body is perishable, full of ignorance, and completely miserable. Therefore, people in general keep this same bodily idea in mind when they are informed of the personal form of the Lord. For such materialistic men, the form of the gigantic material manifestation is supreme. Consequently, they consider the Supreme to be impersonal. And because they are too materially absorbed, the conception of retaining the personality after liberation from matter frightens them. When they are informed that spiritual life is also individual and personal, they become afraid of becoming persons again, and so they naturally prefer a kind of merging into the impersonal void. Generally, they compare the living entities to the bubbles of the ocean, which merge into the ocean. That is the highest perfection of spiritual existence attainable without individual personality. This is a kind of fearful stage of life, devoid of perfect knowledge of spiritual existence. Furthermore, there are many persons who cannot understand spiritual existence at all. Being embarrassed by so many theories and by contradictions of various types of philosophical speculation, they become disgusted or angry and foolishly conclude that there is no supreme cause and that everything is ultimately void. Such people are in a diseased condition of life. So now we review. Some people are too materially attached and therefore do not give attention to spiritual life. Some of them want to merge into the supreme spiritual cause. And some of them disbelieve in everything, being angry at all sorts of spiritual speculation out of hopelessness. The last class of men take to the shelter of some kind of intoxication and their affective hallucinations. This is a revision. The word was effective. And what, effective? And the first editor said, well, that doesn't make any sense. So he's put affective. You know what affective means? Affective is like a psychological term. Well, you ever hear that where they don't have any affect? Where you're just like a dead stone? You have no emotions? It's like a technical term. So he says, oh yeah, emotional hallucinations. I remember that when we used to take acid, you know, we got very emotional. But really what Prabhupada is saying, when he said effective, you know, this is part of having English as a second language, meaning that it's an effect. In other words, resultant. Resultant from what? From taking the drugs. What does it say here? They take shelter of some kind of intoxication, and the resultant hallucinations, you see, that makes much more sense than affective. And the resultant hallucinations are sometimes accepted as spiritual vision, or visions. One has to get rid of all three stages of material consciousness: attachment to material life, fear of spiritual personal identity, and the conception of void that arises from frustration in life. Notice that this is raga, bhaya, and krodha. That's in the verse. Vita, raga, bhaya, krodha. One has to get rid of them. Raga is attachment, and bhaya is fear, and krodha is anger. To get free from these three stages of the material concept of life, one has to take complete shelter of the Lord, guided by the bona fide spiritual master, and follow the disciplines and regulative principles of devotional life. The last stage of the devotional life is called bhava, or transcendental love of God. According to the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.4.15-16, the science of devotional service, and this is these two famous verses, the ladder from faith to love. I'll say, you say. Adhau Shraddha Tatak Sadhu. Okay, let's chant it together, see if we can. Adhau Shraddha Tatak Sadhu Sango Tabhajana Kriya Tato Nartana Vitti Syat Tato Nishta Ruchis Tataha Atasaktis Tato Bhavas Tatak Prema Vyudanchati Sadhakanam Ayam Premna Pradham Bhave Bhavikramaha. In the beginning, one must have a preliminary desire for self-realization. This will bring one to the stage of trying to associate with persons who are spiritually elevated. In the next stage, one becomes initiated by an elevated spiritual master, and under his instruction, the neophyte devotee begins the process of devotional service. By execution of devotional service under the guidance of the spiritual master, one becomes free from all material attachment, attains steadiness in self-realization, and acquires a taste for hearing about the absolute personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. This taste leads one further toward attachment for Krishna, consciousness, which is matured in bhava, or the preliminary stage of transcendental love of God. Real love for God is called prema, the highest perfectional stage of life. In the prema stage, there is constant engagement in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So, by the slow process of devotional service under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, one can attain the highest stage, being freed from all material attachment, from the fearfulness of one's individual spiritual personality, and from the frustrations that result in void philosophy. then one can ultimately attain to the abode of the Supreme Lord. So, this is a very rich verse in purport. First, Krishna says, Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha. Free from attachment, fear, and anger. Now, these are three concomitants of material consciousness. Is that we're in this material world because of our attachment for things other than Krishna. It's described in the 11th canto in the teachings of the 9 Yogendras. Bhayam dvatiya bandhabeshitakshat ishadapetasya viparhyo asmati. That fear arises. And fear is an inevitable concomitant of the material state of life. Sometimes we're not actively afraid, but there's always a threat. The body is a complicated machine. I remember, this is a tragedy, this has happened, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. You know, I live on this peaceful street, Dawes Avenue, it's just a block from here, you know. And there's, you know, some nice trees growing right near the road, and they overhang the road. So one day I looked outside, there was some cop cars across the street. I said, what is all that about? Tragically, there was a branch, a heavy branch, that maybe had died or something. And some lady was sitting in her car under the branch. The branch came down, crushed the roof, and killed her. Just like that. Completely unexpected. This is what, you know, what is that? Padam padam yad vipadam natesham. This verse Prabhupada would always quote. How we need to take shelter of the lotus feet, the boat of the lotus feet of the Lord, to cross over this dangerous ocean of birth and death where there's this danger at every step. Samashita ye padapallavaplavam mahatpadam punya yasho marare. Pavam buddhi vatsapadam param padam 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 yadpadam natesham. Prabhupada liked the poetry of that verse. Samashita, full shelter. That means relying, you know, on Krishna for everything. Samaya padapallava of his lotus feet, padapallava lotus feet, which are mahatpadam in two senses. That's where all the Mahatmas stay. The great souls, they take refuge at the lotus feet. And it's also where the Mahatattva is situated on his, in other words, he's the basis of all creation. And Punya Yasha, this is such a wonderful phrase. You know, Sanskrit is so rich and so concise. What is that? You know this one, Mukunda. Central truth spoken concisely is true eloquence. Did you ever hear that one?
I've heard that one.
This is a statement that's quoted in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So that's what the Bhagavatam is, essential truth spoken concisely. So what this word means, punya yasha, means that just by glorifying Krishna, yasha means fame. So just by glorifying Krishna, glorifying God and his devotees and everything, one attains punya. One becomes pious, one becomes purified just by that glorification. Who is it? Murari, the enemy of the Murra demon, Krishna. So what's the result of that? Bhavam buddhiya. Now, the word bhava and bhava are completely different. Bhava means becoming, change. It's a word that is shorthand for birth and samsara, birth and death. And so that's what this world is. It's bhavam buddhiya, an ocean of change and birth and death, old age and disease. And we've been in that, flailing away on that ocean since time immemorial. So, but here it says that when one takes full shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, which means service and devotional service and glorification of, then that big ocean shrinks down to the water that can be contained, not even in the cow's hoofprint, but in a calf's hoofprint. That's even smaller. In other words, you can easily step over it. So there's this boat, but then getting on the boat means that the ocean itself sinks down. In other words, it's very easy. You're already liberated. Parampadam. Parampadam means this supreme situation, back to Godhead. Parampadam. Bhavambuddhi vatsapadam parampadam padampadam yadvipadam natesham. Not for them, natesham is this world where is danger at every step. Padampadam yadvipadam. Vipadam is danger. So this is a great benefit of taking up devotional service and worshiping Krishna, his lotus feet. Is that even before leaving this body, you have a sense of liberation, because your attachments, your focus is away from this material elements and is on Krishna. And so all of the pulls and pushes and the vita and the raga, the bhaya, the krodha, you know, the fears are lessened and ultimately dissipated the more you advance. Prabhupada was once asked near the beginning, how can you describe the, your consciousness of being Krishna conscious? And he says, no fear. He says in very concisely. He's describing himself. In other words, what's your consciousness? No fear. Hare Krishna. Welcome. Thanks for coming. So that's a transcendental state of consciousness, because this world is fearful at every right now. I mean, I don't want to be depress anybody, but I mean, we've had this pandemic, right? This has been a downer. It's certainly not who become, and it's threatening. And now we've got this war going on in Ukraine, which I mean, it's not a mystery that there's a danger it could blow up into a nuclear war.
12 mass shootings over the weekend.
What is it?
12 mass shootings over the weekend.
Yeah, then you have this armed madhouse called the United States, where there's 400 million weapons for 300 million people. But that means because some people have whole armories, they have hundreds of guns. It's not that everyone has a gun. Anyway, so if you know what's going on, then you'll be afraid. It just goes with the territory. Because you're in the bodily concept of life. The body is such a fragile little thing. We know that. You know, these children, this is why everyone is so upset. Innocent little children get blown away by this madman, you know, and the police wait it out. It's just crazy. So this is the world we live in. So how do we transcend this fear? How do we deal with this in a way that really is a solution? There's no material solution. Even if they got rid of all the guns, it'd still be so much threat. You know, birth, old age, disease, and death are there. So one has to transcend the bodily concept of life. One has to understand and live on the platform that I'm not this body. That I'm firmly convinced, and ultimately, we just read this Adar Sharata Diksara Sangha verse. So it's worth focusing on this a minute, because the last part, Sadhakam ayam premna. In prema, one is real prema. One is completely aware of his eternal form, the Sarup, beyond the body. He's living in that form, internally and externally. Prabhupada would often say, yes, pure devotion means 24 hours a day serving Krishna. Oh, what does that mean? I got to sleep sometime, right? Yeah, and while you sleep, you're remembering your perfect body. You're still serving Krishna in your dream, and it's a reality. It means 24 hours. You're living in that. Can you imagine how peaceful that would be? It means live or die. We had some deaths in the last couple of years in this community. And one that sticks out for me, especially most amazing and wonderful, was Shamali. Shamali left, you know. And her father was there, and her mother stayed with her. Her mother's Parashakti. She does puja here all the time. And his father's a long-time devotee here, Yamunapati. And I remember her. I came here in '89. She was maybe 3 or 4 years old at that time. And she was living right across from me in an apartment complex where I lived right nearby here. And I remember, you know, how cute she was. And then she took up the flute, which is very exciting because I play the flute too, you know. And then she grew up and went away. She went to school in England and everything, you know. But she eventually took initiation. And she was married an old favorite here, Bhishma Dev, who was a temple president one time, you know. And they were living in Alatra. I would visit there twice a year. And they would invite me over for lunch and everything, you know. And then we heard this tragic news. She came down with cancer, you know. She had only a few months to live. But she had so many friends around the world helping, you know, chanting for her. I called up and we had chanting some verses for her. But mainly her spiritual master was getting on the phone. He was in lockdown. This is during the pandemic. He's in Vrindavan, and he's calling her and spending an hour on the phone with her and encouraging her and giving her. And Yamuna was there when she passed. And he said she was so relaxed, you know, she just exhaled. And the way he visualized it, they came and got on the airplane and she just left. There was no fear, there was no anxiety and regrets and everything, and she was very peaceful. I mean, we all got to face that point at one time. Isn't that what we want? Rather than, you know, so much anxiety and terror, which most people face. I used to work in a hospital. I know what it is. Mostly they just drug them up so people are unconscious, which is the worst thing. that's part of material body, is leaving it. So what Krishna consciousness deals with the most essential problems that we have, birth, old age, disease, and death, round and around and around. And if we follow it, then we can see this is the process. We'll just go through this real quick. Adhar Shraddha. First is faith. Now this faith is not, there's further faith at the Nishta stage. But this is probably, say, this is the preliminary interest. Just as someone who gets a book and opens the book, that's the Adhar Shraddha. There's some preliminary interest and willing to investigate. That's the faith. And of course it can mean someone who's, has some firm faith and participates constantly in it. But the Shraddha brings you into the association of sadhus, of devotees. You want to associate. Association is everything. Our consciousness is formed by our association. Not just with other people, but with other things, with other ideas, with words of all kinds. And so, but this is sadhu sangha. This is the association of devotees. And by that association, one becomes eager to participate, to chant. Bhajana kriya. Bhajana kriya begins with the chanting of the holy name. So by that bhajana kriya, with chanting on beads and chanting and doing other things, one progresses. And at a certain point, one wants to get serious and take initiation. See, this is a serious business. I want to, So initiation means really confirming. Like they have this thing, what is it, Catholic confirmation? Where I remember some of my friends when I was young, they would have, yes, I've been confirmed. I don't know if that's a Protestant or a Catholic thing. But it means that you're a serious, Catholic or Protestant. So you get confirmed, and then you're hooked up to the parampara, and your bhajan goes on, and then there's this anartha nivriti. The bhajan, the association, the process is purifying the heart. Cheto darpana marjanam. There's so many anarthas that we've accumulated over lifetimes. Lust, anger, greed, illusion, all different varieties of these things, attachments, they need to be purified so that we can experience ourselves as we really are, as spiritual beings, as devotees of Krishna. So the anartha nivriti stage is progressing. This is all described in the second chapter, first canto. And then when there's a certain percentage, not all, nashta prayeshu abhadreshu, one comes to the stage of nishta. Nishta is firm faith. Shraddha shabde, this is real firm faith. Shraddha shabde vishwaska sudadhan destroy Krishna bhakti koli sarva karma katahor. Is firm faith that just by the process of bhakti, all my aspirations will be achieved. In other words, Krishna consciousness is the most important thing. And I have full confidence that if I just progress and persevere in this process, that I'll perfect my life. And then, as you're doing that, your ruchi is increasing. Your taste for everything related to Krishna, especially the holy name. The holy name becomes sweeter and sweeter. And so many verses describe it as the sweetest thing of the sweet. Mararam mararebyopi, mangalebyopi mangalam, pavanam pavanebyopi, hare nama vagevalam. Of sweet things, it's the sweetest you will taste at any time. Of things that bring good fortune, it's the perfect paradigm. Of things that purify, it purifies most powerfully. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. This was written by an associate of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we discovered, named Nilakanta. It's one verse of many. So everything about Krishna becomes more and more relishable. And everything about the material things we used to enjoy, I'm not even interested anymore. No attraction. That's what we need. Vairagya. That comes with knowledge, and it comes with purification. It's just been keeping it's Maya's trick to keep us bound here in suffering. We don't, it's liberation. So then real attraction for Krishna starts coming, atasaktis, which matures into bhava, this is just before prema, and then prema, which also has varieties. These are the step-by-step stages that a sadhaka, a practitioner, will experience on the way from faith to love. So this is all Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Prabhupada gave us as nectar of devotion. You should study it. Okay, any discussion on these points? There's so much more that could be said. But just to review here, one thing about this systematic purport is that most people are too much involved in raga, means material attachments, to take Krishna consciousness seriously, to take this transcendental knowledge seriously. This is blocking them. Then there are those who want liberation, but they're afraid of a body. They identify that a body means limitation. And so they want to merge. This is the impersonalists. So they're fearful, bhaya. They're fearful of getting another body again. So therefore, they don't believe the Absolute has a body, and they don't believe that they ultimately have a body. But then, where's the foundation of their realization? By great kritrena, by hard austerities, a few get up to the Brahman platform. But there's no Krishna there. There's no activities there. It's like lying down in a sensory deprivation. What do they call it? The tank. Thank you. Forever. Does that sound good? I mean, some say, oh, it was so nice in there, but then there was a point I wanted to get out of there. I got to go to work. No, there's nothing to do. There's nobody to see. And no, and so that's fear. And then there's anger. Those who have been cheated in this philosophy, that philosophy, and so they doubt. They lump in Krishna consciousness as one of these cheating philosophies. So they also can't take it. They want to move into the void. So those Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha, all those have to be given out. And we need to, take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. Well, it's getting late. I'm afraid we don't have any more time, but I do have time for another little poem, if I would. So let's see. Let me see if I can, 1 or 2 minutes, I can finish this wonderful poem about the holy name. So he goes on and he says, "Ah Brahma Stambhaparyam tam sarvamayam jagat satyam satyam punak satyam harinamaiva kevalam." I'll just give you the English. From Brahma's realm atop the sky down to the lowly grass, illusion reigns in Maya Devi's treacherous morass. The truth, the only truth, the name of Shri Hari. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. He's the guru, he's the father, he's the friend most true. And she's the real mother who most kindly teaches you to always hear and chant the holy name of Shri Hari. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Remember, this is my favorite one, remember that our final breath may come at any time, no matter if we're old and sick or in our youthful prime. So young and old alike should chant the name incessantly. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Lord Shri Hari forever dwells wherever devotees whose hearts are fixed in him and free of all impurities uplift their voices high and sing his name in ecstasy. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Alas, what sorrow, what great pain, the worst calamity for people to forget the holy name of Shri Hari. Although the name's a priceless gem, mere broken glass they see. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Just fill your ears, just fill them with the name of Shri Hari. Just chant the name with all sincerity. Just sing the name, just sing the holy name eternally. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. It makes this world appear like bits of straw upon the ground. Resplendently it reigns supreme, divinity and sound. It's filled with transcendental bliss and peerless purity. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Inspired to glorify the holy name of Shri Hari, Shri Nilakanta wrote this hymn in Sanskrit poetry. I pray that those who hear this lowly version made by me will chant the holy name of Shri Hari in ecstasy. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.